Hi, I'm Steve Nathans Kelly, Editor-in-Chief of Streaming Media Europe, and I'm here today with Alexander Leschinsky, co-founder and managing director of G&L, a leading system integrator and managed service provider for audio and video processing, distribution, and playback. Welcome, Alexander.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me.
Today we're going to talk a bit about the challenges of certifying the provenance of media content, why it matters, and the work that G&L is doing in that area. Let's jump right in. So why don't we just start sort of defining terms? So what is C2PA and why is it important for today's digital content landscape?
Yeah, so it's C2PA stands for Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. And it's a grown demand by the market to be able to cryptographically prove that certain content is coming from a certain content owner or from a certain device. Because it's easier than never before to fake content, to claim authorship of content, or to take foreign content that has been produced by somebody else and claim it was yours. And in the digital market, there is a lot about trust in brands, especially in the news sector. And fake news and claims of authenticity can cause difficulties for democracy, can cause violence. So there is a huge demand on the content side that companies that want to invest in the trust that their audience has with their brands, that they need a means to somehow prove that content comes from them and that nobody else can claim that they are the author of a certain piece of content. And that's where C2PA comes from. It was founded by companies like the BBC, the New York Times was involved in the beginning, Microsoft played a major role, and there were some organizations that took care of content authenticity before that, but in the end they founded the C2PA as an industry organization that covers both content side and device manufacturers and also streaming services, so that they can focus on defining a standard that can be used globally and helps to improve trust of all the audience into content of brands they like to consume.
And that's critical. I mean, everything we hear is that trust in media and trust in content is at an all-time low, and reasonably enough, given the circumstances. So what is G&L's role in the content integrity ecosystem, and how does G&L help broadcasters and media companies implement C2PA standards?
Yeah, so G&L usually acts as a systems integrator and managed service provider. So we work with 150 products from different partners. We integrate them into solutions, create a management user interface and APIs. So I often say we are the one asked to kick in a multi-vendor project. And people come to us, customers come to us if they have workflows that need to be very customized to their individual historically grown infrastructure, but where they need a high degree of automation and reliability. So we integrate video transcoding, video streaming, playback, analytics, content delivery, you name it. And during that phase where we looked into how we can support C2PA, we saw that C2PA in the end is a resource intensive process because it involves taking media content, and this can be for small compressed content for distribution, but it can also be uncompressed content in production and contribution. So it can be really huge media files, and it needs to compute a hash out of that content. And hash computation is not very complex, but it's compute intensive. So it's a service that customers do not necessarily want to do on their own. And this is where we come into place. We often store and process a lot of media content for our customers anyway. So we have exabytes of storage that we operate where we have transcoded material on it. We operate live transcoding farms, on-demand transcoding farms, and many customers would like us to help them do the heavy lifting of the C2PA signing, and that involves calculating the hashes of media content and then doing the signing process. And that's where we usually help. So it's just one more step in the signal chain. So we do not stop with transcoding. We do not stop with content aggregation. In between, we also sign the content, and that's where what customers like, that it's part of a signal chain that we cover anyway. It's just one more step where we can support them without the need for them to create something completely new out of scratch or create a new workflow on their side. They can just chain it into something that already exists.
And so here in the U.S., in February 2024, California introduced a piece of legislation known as the California Provenance, Authenticity, and Watermarking Standards Act. It's still currently under review in the California State Senate, but it sets forth a comprehensive framework aimed at authenticating both synthetic and real content. Do you see similar legislation initiatives occurring in the European Union?
Yes, we definitely do, both on the European Union itself and in the member countries, as Germany here, for instance. They have different legal means to enforce the authenticity or proofs of authenticity. The main driver behind that is identification of artificial intelligence that is taking part in creation of content or has modified content. So it's a slightly different lens that sometimes the legislation takes and where C2PA is being used. The intention of C2PA is not to identify AI-supported content creation. It has metadata markers that can identify AI, but it's not the original cause why it has been founded. But in many ways, both on the legislation side, C2PA is being used to fulfill a legal need or a mandatory requirement to identify AI. And as C2PA is able to do so because it has the necessary metadata flags, it is being used for that. And also some of the social media networks like LinkedIn or TikTok and already YouTube started with that. They are looking into C2PA metadata that is already available in content that is uploaded to the platform. But they only display the C2PA related metadata if it's AI content. So in the way how these social media networks are using C2PA, it's more like oh, pay attention, this is AI moderated, AI generated or AI modified content, which isn't necessarily the way that the C2PA would like to see it, because if users get trained to that, they see the C2PA logo more like a warning label, which is not the intention. The intention is, hey, this is content where there is cryptographical proof that the author or the publisher is actually the entity that created that content or takes responsibility for it. But still, that's the reality how it works. And so coming back to your question, yes, we see a lot of legislation here, but mostly it's about identifying content that has been modified or created by AI, and there C2PA plays an important role.
So how can G&L's C2PA compliance solution empower broadcasters to maintain audience trust and safeguard content authenticity? I back during IBC in September, you presented the complex glass-to-glass solution at the EBU booth. Can you describe the solution?
Sure, of course. So C2PA usually involves an important step, and that is hashing of the content and then signing it with a certificate. So it's a combination of an entity like a company, a device manufacturer, or a publisher gets a certificate of their identity. It's like having a website certificate. So if you go to streamingmedia.com, you know it's streamingmedia.com because you have at some point acquired a certificate for that. And nobody else can claim to be streamingmedia.com because you have that domain and that certificate there. The same is true with C2PA. So entities can get these certificates. That's the first part. The second part is they take content, and it can be practically any digital content, but currently best supported are images, PDF files, and video on demand, monolithic MP4 files, but also fragmented HLS and Dash on demand files. And these assets can be taken, can be computed, the hash can be computed, and then the hash together with metadata can be signed with the certificate. That's the main workflow that you have in C2PA. So what G&L can do is we help customers, to look at their workflow and see where does that workflow best open up for adding C2PA information. And then we help them to implement a workflow that is automated and transparent and reliable. That's our main task here. And there are two different approaches within the C2PA what to identify. What is the entity that is being identified by a C2PA certificate. And so one philosophy says this is only a device or a software. So this would mean that many of the camera manufacturers that are part of C2PA, like Nikon or Panasonic, they have certificates that they introduce and integrate into their cameras. And whenever you make a recording with that camera, the output contains C2PA signatures with that certificate. So that means this is generated by a Nikon camera. The same is true for Adobe Photoshop or Premiere. So if you work with these tools, the output states, hey, this has been worked on with Adobe tools. Or if you take OpenAI and you use Dolly for creating images, it's also already integrating C2PA metadata. So this is the side where the vendor or where the tool is signaling, hey, this is from an authentic company, and we sign these pieces of content. The other part is that a publisher, more like an editorial entity, takes that content, and these entities do not necessarily want to advertise that they are using Sony cameras or Adobe Photoshop. So they want to prove, hey, I'm BBC, I'm CNN, I'm Fox, whoever wants to show that this content has been authored by them. So this is the separate part where the publisher or the editorial teams want to add their signature. So they also can apply for certificates. And these are the companies, these broadcasters are the ones where we help them to go beyond what the device manufacturers integrate so that they can add proof for their own editorial provenance. That's where we come into place.
Obviously it's still early days for C2PA. And, you talk a little bit about how G&L's capabilities can add to the identification that exists there. And also you talked a little bit about how C2PA is a little bit being misunderstood at this point as kind of a warning label. So given the current state of the standard, of the C2PA standard, what would you say are the existing limitations of it at this point, and how can G&L help publishers or others overcome those limitations?
So the first part is that historically, C2PA has focused first on images because they are the easiest one to fake, and they are the easiest one to protect. So that has been the start. And then monolithic video on demand has been targeted and packaged, segmented on-demand videos as well. The huge gap that we currently have in C2PA as a standard is live and just-in-time packaging. Those are not yet supported. And the way how they chose to implement the hashing and cryptographical encryption, does it make difficult to move that to live? Because then you don't have a start, you don't have an end time. It's just a continuum in which you have to somehow try to get your hashes into. So that's difficult. That's currently something that is lacking in the market. And so when G&L joined C2PA as a member of the organization, we mostly focused on being part of the live workflow task forces. So we are small in comparison to some of the other members. So there is Sony, there is Microsoft, there is Google. G&L is much smaller in comparison, but we have a lot of experience with very difficult and very different live streaming setups. So not a uniform way like a platform like YouTube would do it themselves, but because we have hundreds of customer projects and everything is slightly different and everybody comes with a different set of requirements. So we have seen a lot of different live streaming setups over the last 2 decades. And with that experience, we can ask some important questions in these task forces, and we can also channel demands that we get from our customers into these working groups. That's where we are most active in. That's the first part that we do. The second part is we have a lot of experience in taking tools that are available and integrate them into a reliable workflow. So Of course, customers can use the available open source tools for C2PA signing themselves. They can use FFmpeg for transcoding, but this is fun as long as you try to work with that in the lab. But on day 2, on day 3, when it's Saturday evening and something goes wrong, you need a company that really takes care of that 24/7 workload and that knows what to do to make this a reliable and repeatable workflow that also works on Christmas Eve. So that's where we come into place.
Oh, okay. And what's the next step for a media company that wants to become C2PA compliant?
So the first thing is you need to get some kind of certificate. So there are a couple of vendors that create these certificates. We can help you set this up and make it easy for you. Then you need to get these certificates on some kind of trust list. So there are different trust lists, and it's a bit like the trust system that is built into the browsers and devices that can work with websites. They also have a trust list to see, hey, is that streamingmedia.com certificate, can I trust this? And perhaps you have bought it from some of the certificate vendors, and they are part of some trust list that the browser trusts. And the same is true with C2PA. So there is at least one trust list that is more coming from the editorial side, where the broadcasters and news agencies are in. So you need to get your certificate in that trust list so that it's recognized. Or if you're a device manufacturer, you want to get in the official C2PA trust list. So those are 2 steps that are necessary where we can help you to achieve that. And then you have to look into your workflow. What kind of media content do you want to support? And our strong suggestion is most companies who have video have also images and photos. So start with that. That's the easiest part. It's quicker to implement. You get some first hand experience, and then you can move on from there. It's the part where C2PA is most mature. So I would strongly suggest to look into just start with images and photos. And then you can move on to video on demand, where it's also easy. Add that into your workflow and enable C2PA for your workflow, and make a decision if you just want to use it as a signal towards your audience. So do you want to sign content that you deliver to your audience so that they can trust you? Or do you do it the other way around and request from your partners that deliver content to you, because broadcasters don't create all the content themselves. They have myriads of contractors that deliver news content to them from cameras in the field. Do you as a broadcaster require these subcontractors to sign content themselves so that you can trust that it's coming from the source it's claiming to be coming from? So those are decisions that you have to make your mind up around, and we can help you have these discussions and then make an implementation plan that creates an economical, feasible, reliable infrastructure for actually doing the signing and the delivery of that content.
Great. And where can people learn more about G&L?
So you can just go to gl-systemhouse.de, that's our website, and you can meet us at the major trade shows, so IBC, NAB, and now a couple of local ones in Germany. Hamburg Open is coming up next week, and the ANGA in Cologne as well. So yeah, reach out to us there or via our website, or LinkedIn is something where I'm very active at as well.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for your time, Alexander. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me, and have a great rest of the day.